Good afternoon, everyone. I do want to let you know we're just waiting for a couple people to come in to attend. This presentation will be by Jeffery Seabury. He's the inclusion liaison here at Achieva as part of the InVest project. It'll be on the right to know or disclose. Um, just some of the topics will include, understanding the workplace rights, including privacy, accommodations, and fair treatment and/or practices. Exploring simple ways to request accommodations and how to communicate those effectively within the workplace, and understanding how accommodations can support success, independence, and confidence within the workplace.
Are you
And
able to see my presentation?
I
Okay.
am. And we'll also record this as well. So if anyone does miss it or needs to as a refresher, we will have this on record. So Jeff, we'll wait about 2 more minutes just to allow people to come in and go from there. And feel free to drop any questions in the chat you may have along the way. If we don't get to them, just so they don't leave your mind, please do put them in the chat so we can address them to follow up if we don't answer them as we're live talking in the presentation. Welcome, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. This is Jeffery Seabury, Inclusion Liaison here at Achieva as part of the InVest project, and I'll let him go ahead and start his presentation. We look forward to it. Thanks, Jeffrey.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. So as Nicole shared, my name is Jeff Seabury, and I am the inclusion liaison under the InVest grant through Achieva and OVR. And I just want to welcome you to this presentation about right to know and disability disclosure work. So today we're going to talk a little bit about um, when an employer has a right to know about a disability, when you do or do not have to tell them, how accommodations work, and how to ask for support if you need it. So a lot of people are unsure about these kinds of things, and that's okay. Workplace rules and disability rights can sometimes feel confusing, though there's a lot of different laws and nuances out there. So I just wanted to create this presentation as a way to address some of those and just lay some foundational knowledge. So it's meant to explain these ideas in a simple and easy to understand way. And so I want to just start this out by saying this: the most important thing to remember about right to know is that you do have rights at work, and you deserve to be treated with respect. Um, and so this introduction slide just sort of summarizes what I just said a little bit there. So it's about when an employer has right to know about a disability. So we'll go ahead and jump right into my first slide here, which is what does disclosure mean? So disclosure means telling an employer that you have a disability or that you need support because of a disability. That could sound like um, I have autism, or I need written instructions to help me do my job. Disclosure does not mean you have to share every single detail about your disability or medical history. You can share as much as you like or as little as you like to communicate that you need an accommodation of some sort. So usually what that means is you only need to explain, like I said, what support you need and how that support helps you do your job better. A lot of people think disclosure has to sound formal or complicated, but it really does not. So we'll go to the next slide there. Um, does an employer have a right to know? A lot of people wonder, do I have to tell an employer about my disability? And most of the time, the answer is no. Before you are hired, employers usually cannot ask questions about disabilities, diagnoses, medications, or medical history. But they can ask things like, can you do the job? Or do you need accommodations for the interview? So this means you usually do not have to disclose a disability during an interview unless you need support or accommodations. And the key thing to remember here is that you are allowed to have privacy. So your information is your own, your medical history is your own, and your diagnosis is your own. So move to the next slide here. So when you may want to disclose. So sometimes disclosure can be helpful. You may want to disclose if you need accommodations or support at work. For example, you may need written instructions, quieter workspace, extra training time, or a consistent routine. Disclosure can help employers understand how to support you better. So you can disclose if you are struggling with a task or feeling overwhelmed, confused by instructions, or if you're having difficulty in the workplace environment. Remember, you can disclose at any time during the hiring process or after the hiring process. So you can do it before getting hired, during training, or even after working somewhere for a long time. You may you may not know that you need a specific accommodation until you've started doing the duties of your job, and it comes up, and hey, now I need an accommodation of some sort. I need a assistive technology, or a stool, or certain you know uh, tools to help you better complete your job. So there's not just one correct time to disclose your disability and request an accommodation. So on to the next slide here. Let's see. Oh, something went wrong. Oops. Okay, there we go. So when you may not want to disclose, so this is just as important to discuss. Some people decide not to disclose their disability. Maybe they don't need accommodations, or their disability does not affect their work in any way, or they want privacy, or they simply feel uncomfortable sharing personal information. And that's okay too. You don't have to disclose. Disclosure is often a personal choice. So obviously, you're allowed to keep medical or personal information private if you do not need workplace support. So some people disclose right away, some people never disclose, and some people wait until they know the workplace better. So different people make different choices. And sort of the key idea there is that you do not owe everyone details about your disability. Um, you can choose to only share with HR or a manager, but you don't have to go around sharing every aspect of your disability with all of your coworkers or everyone in the workplace if you don't want to. But of course, if you want to, you can approach that however you would like, but it's not a requirement. Let's go on to the next slide here. So the sort of the key thing here is when disclosure is usually necessary. So I've sort of covered this a little bit, but I wanted to go over it in a little deeper detail here. So there are some situations where disclosure is usually necessary. Most commonly, this happens when you want accommodations or workplace support. So a good example is if loud noises make it hard for you to focus, your employer may not know you need help unless you tell them. So you can't expect them to just know that you need help with this task or something along those lines. Or maybe verbal instructions are hard for you to remember, or you need extra time to learn tasks, or there's a need for visual supports, things along those lines. So employers cannot provide accommodations if they do not know that support is needed. So that's why disclosure is sometimes important. So the key thing to remember here is the goal of disclosure is not to label yourself. It's simply to help you succeed at work. To find what is best for you in completing your duties and responsibilities in work. So on to the next slide here. So the big thing here. So how to disclose a disability. So the good news is if you're not a well-spoken person or this is your first time, asking for accommodations or something along those lines, the disclosure does not have to sound formal or legal. You can keep it simple. You don't need perfect words, or you don't need to know disability laws or things along those lines. So for example, you can say, I work better with written instructions, or I need extra time to learn new tasks, or I focus better in quieter areas, or even just a simple question during the training period. Can you show me that task again, or could you explain that again in a different way? Something along those lines. And so, who are some good people to talk to? In the workplace, you could go to a supervisor, a manager, human resources, or ideally they someone could also come to a provider like us, like a job coach or a vocational rehabilitation counselor, and we can speak on their behalf. And as I mentioned in a previous slide, so you do not have to tell your coworkers unless you want to. If and it's also important to note that if talking face to face is stressful, that's okay too. Some people will write an email or a note or practice what they want to say beforehand. Sort of write out a script. So what key points you want to hit when asking for accommodations. Or they could ask a support person, like a job coach or a VR counselor, to help them communicate. Because different people communicate in different ways. So on to the next slide there. So things employers should not do. So employers also have responsibilities when, providing accommodations to employees. So employers should not be doing things like pressuring you to disclose. They should not ask unnecessary medical questions, share your disability information with everyone, or treat you unfairly because of a disability. Your disability information should be kept private. That belongs to you. And if there is ever a circumstance where those rights have been violated, there's a lot of different avenues, that can be, traveled, uh, should that occur. First and foremost, you could start with HR, the human resources within, that your employer provides, but it could be escalated as high as going to the Equal Employment Opportunities Commission, or the EEOC, if it goes that high. Because the sort of the most important thing here is to remember that you deserve to be treated respectfully at work. We'll go to the next slide here. So, how to ask for accommodations. In case you don't know, just a little brief overview on what is an accommodation. An accommodation is a support or adjustment that helps someone do their job successfully. So examples could be, and I've sort of covered some of these, but it's good to have it all in one place. Written instructions, flexible schedules, noise canceling headphones, extra training time, job coaching, visual schedules, or breaks when needed. And those are just some examples. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of different types of accommodations. There are a lot of good resources out there. If you are not familiar, there's the Job Accommodation Network, or JAN. They have an excellent website that is a good place to go and type in the types of tasks or jobs that an individual or client has, and it'll list all kinds of accommodations. It's a really great resource if you aren't using it. But accommodations are not special treatment. They are simply tools that help people succeed. It's just a way to ensure that you are, completing the tasks or duties of your job. And a lot of people feel nervous about asking for accommodations. Some people worry, will I get in trouble, or will people think I can't do the job, or what if I say the wrong thing? And those feelings are very normal, especially if it's the first time someone has ever asked for an accommodation. But it's important to hammer home that asking for accommodations is not a bad thing. The purpose of accommodations is to remove barriers and to make the workplace more manageable. So it's simply there as a support. Before I move forward, just some other things worth sharing. You can ask for accommodations, before starting a job, during training, or any time while working. You don't have to wait until things become extremely stressful. In fact, it's actually usually better to ask early before frustration builds up. So if you go into, if you have someone going into a job, and they know ahead of time that they're going to need an accommodation of some sort, the earlier is the better. So it's, you can ask, or share that instructions are confusing, or the environment is overwhelming, or tasks move too quickly, or verbal directions are difficult to remember. There's just some examples there. So those are all situations where accommodations might help. So I also wanted to share, before we move to the next slide. Sorry. Now we're going to jump ahead. My apologies. So just some key takeaways here. Remember, you do not always have to disclose a disability. Disclosure is often your choice. You may need to disclose if you want accommodations or support. You do not need to share every detail about your disability, and asking for accommodations is okay. So accommodations exist to help people succeed at work. Most importantly, you deserve respect, support, and fair treatment in the workplace. And that is all I have. I know this was brief, just a quick little lunch and learn. So if anybody has any questions, now is a good time to ask those or drop those in the chat. But also I have my my contact information here on this last slide, my email there. I'm available at any time for any kinds of questions. That is all I have there. Anybody have anything?
Jeff, I thought it was great, and I just wanted to like hone in and piggyback on what you were saying that, kind of one size doesn't fit all. I'm looking for accommodations or asking or wherever in the process of employment as needed. So great job on emphasizing that because there's not always a right time, right? And they're always seeking whatever that accommodation may look like. It could be any part of the process of our lives. Because, we may incur disability, maybe not have a disability, right? Maybe incur one throughout our lifespan and now do need accommodation. So there's no right or wrong way to go about it, in that time frame. So thanks again, Jeff, for kind of honing in on that. Um, if
Yeah,
any
absolutely.
Yes, definitely. Does anybody else have any questions or if you want to throw anything in the chat, or please feel free to throw your email in the chat so we can at least give you a summary so you have this recording to reference in the future. Okay, well, I appreciate you all logging in today and learning more about this topic as part of the InVest project. And I hope you all have a great afternoon. And thanks again for joining us.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.